For the past 2 years, I've lived exclusively in Europe. First for a year in the Czech Republic and in Spain since. I've absolutely loved living here, and in my opinion, there's no better continent. But there are certainly a few things I miss about the US. Number 1, the food. So I talk a lot about European food. One of my favorite things to do here in Europe, and particularly here in Spain, is to go out to eat. That's not something I did a whole lot of back in the States, but here of course we have the tapas culture, we've got great daily menus, which they have in the Czech Republic as well, which make eating and drinking out far more affordable than they ever would be in the US. That being said, I do prefer the diversity of food which is offered in the US. For example, in my hometown of about 150,000 people, I could find food from all over the world, no problem. There was a Korean place my mom and I used to go to where people from Korea, immigrants from Korea, actually prepared the food, and it was amazing. There are so many Mexican restaurants, of course in Texas, right? There are also authentic Chinese restaurants. There are restaurants that serve Ecuadorian cuisine. Literally any type of food you can think of, you're going to find the authentic version of in the US. In Europe, by contrast, depending on the country you're in, the food offerings differ widely. For example, here in Spain, most of the food is going to be jamon based or potato based, or you might get some chicken every now and then. In the Czech Republic, there's going to be a lot of dumplings. You're going to eat a lot of pork. Again, chicken every now and then. In my experience, most European cuisine is meat and potatoes based, and each country has their own iterations. So while people often think of American cuisine as hamburgers and French fries, McDonald's or Burger King, when I think about eating in America, I think about the diversity of options and all the different authentic options you have. Number 2, driving. I also talk a lot about the public transportation here in Europe and how it's vastly superior to that of the United States. Growing up in the US, we drove everywhere. And when I turned 16, I got my own car and started driving to school every single day. It's a part of the culture, and it's not necessarily a part of the culture that I'm particularly fond of. For example, I think that when you spend so much time in a car, it leads to really unhealthy social habits. For instance, if you're taking public transport, that's an opportunity to interact with others. Now, 90% of the people are going to be doing their own thing, they're going to be listening to music, or they're going to be staring at their phones, but you never know what might happen, who you might bump into. And while you're on public transport, you can do other things. You can be productive. When you're behind the wheel, you're locked in. Or at least you should be. You shouldn't be doing anything else. Being here in a small Spanish town, I do miss having the freedom of a car. During the work week, I don't really miss having a car. I can walk to my schools, I can walk to any bar or restaurant. I'm 5 minutes from the Plaza Mayor, there's the town square, which offers just about everything you can think of. I walk to get groceries, I walk to visit friends, and I think it's a much healthier way of living. But on those days when I want to go for a hike in some secluded area, and I find that maybe the bus only goes there once a day, which would require me to stay overnight, or there's no bus at all, it can be pretty frustrating. So having the freedom to hit the open road and go wherever you want, whenever you want, listen to your own music, blast the AC, I think that's a very American thing, and it's something I really miss. And for those of you thinking, why don't you just get a car in Spain or in Europe? It's a valid point. It's something I've looked into. But unfortunately, if you stay here longer than 6 months, most nations within Europe, Spain and the Czech Republic included, require you to get a domestic license. So you can no longer use your international license after 6 months. And you better learn how to drive stick. So I think that segues pretty well into the third thing I miss about the US, which is the West. Growing up in Texas, I used to daydream just about every day about some long road trip out to the American West. Once a year, we take our pilgrimage to Colorado for a ski trip, and it's something I look forward to the other 51 weeks out of the year. The American West is filled with unexplored gems. And sure, Europe has a ton of natural areas as well. But to me, there's something wild about the American West. It just seems so untouched, so underdeveloped. And there's nothing like being in a national park like Yellowstone or Arches, and just looking out and knowing that that land hasn't changed one bit in the past thousands of years. It's something really special, and it's something I dearly miss. Number 4, opportunities. So as I've said, I've been in Europe for 2 years. I taught English in the Czech Republic, and I teach English here in Spain as well. Why do I teach English, you ask? Well, as an English speaker, there are very few opportunities in the workforce. Here in Spain, my visa is tied to a cultural exchange program in which I work as an English language assistant in Spanish public schools. And my contract and visa are both for only 8 months at a time, so it can be very limiting. In the Czech Republic, I had a little more freedom with my visa, but still, because of the language barrier and because foreigners are often seen as a flight risk, it can be very difficult to find other opportunities. Luckily for me, I'm not really looking to climb the corporate ladder, but if that's something you're looking for, then it can be a massive challenge here in Europe. Number 5, sports. So, growing up, I watched a ton of sports. Every weekend was based around what time the Texas Longhorns played on Saturday and what time the Dallas Cowboys played on Sunday. And if I wasn't watching sports, I was playing them. Now, prior to making the move to Europe, I had sort of drifted away from that fanatical culture of excitement and extreme disappointment, which all rides on the performance of a group of men who have no association with you other than that you watch them. I had sort of decided that sports weren't very important, but they are fun to watch, and what I really miss is getting together with a group of friends and throwing some burgers on the grill and sitting around the television for 3 hours and watching the game and having a chat. It's been over 2 years since I've actually sat down and watched a football game. I've streamed some baseball games now and then, but because of the 7-hour time difference, and because those games are just not aired here, it's really not an option to watch them. What I end up doing is watching these short clips on YouTube, and they just don't do the event justice. You know, there's no social aspect to that. So it is something I miss. So to recap, after 2 years of living in Europe, there are a few things I miss about the US. Number 1, the food. Number 2, driving, the freedom of the open road. Number 3, going out west. Number 4, the opportunities. And number 5, the sports. As I said, I absolutely love living here in Europe, and I definitely plan to make a video about it. So stay tuned, and I'll see you soon.